Thank you. We come to this extraordinary place today to participate in an event of historic import, the President's signing of the National and Community Service Trust Act of 1993. The National Service Program we celebrate is bold and new, but is also built on the bedrock of history. It's fitting that we gather under a tent like this today. The service has always covered and engaged Americans of all backgrounds. We honor today all of the service heroes, the famous and the unsung, who've come before us, those who represent our nation's largest voluntary organizations, those who have labored for VISTA, the foster grandparents, RSVP, senior companions, the Peace Corps, and those who have kept their storefront operations alive with little more than love and grit. We're also joined today, as we have been throughout this journey, by cabinet members, senior-most officers of our military services, heads of several of our agencies, as well as some of our nation's most honored educators, foundation directors, together with some of America's most successful athletes, business people, all of whom we consider to be founding shareholders of the new Corporation for National Service. And perhaps most important, we see the faces of service arrayed behind me and throughout the audience, young people who are truly the future of our country, including VISTA volunteers, Service Corps from Pennsylvania, Maryland, District of Columbia, and Boston City Year. They clean city parks and rural streams. They read to the blind, they help immunize children, and they do dozens of other hard and meaningful projects to help our neighbors and our neighborhoods. Now, my young friends, I'd like to say something directly to you. We're counting on you. We're counting on you to continue your work. But I want you to do even more. Through the long hours and frustrations, I want you to look for the best in each other. I want you to embrace all of the responsibilities and challenges which service brings. I worked with many of our guests today in 1992 when Bill Clinton and Al Gore were on the campaign trail. At every stop along the way, the message of educational opportunity tied to responsibility resonated. From high school dropouts to college graduates, from those of us in the Peace Corps generation to our parents from the Civilian Conservation Corps. It resonated with audiences diverse as America itself, from the University of Notre Dame 1 year ago to that stunning day in January when President Clinton, in his inaugural address, called each of us to a season of service. And the vision and work of national service has continued from Rutgers on the first day of March when the President challenged our young people to serve and they responded, to New Orleans on the last day of April when he outlined the legislation he was submitting to Congress and which he'll sign today, to our first season of service this summer, launched by the Vice President and concluded at a forum of service heroes led by the President at the University of Maryland. But the last 8 months required the equal goodwill, wise words, and bold actions of a truly remarkable bipartisan group of legislators. From the beginning, our numerous friends on Capitol Hill, were there helping us craft and refine a piece of legislation which will make national service accountable, decentralized, efficient, yet innovative. May I ask for a true service audience roar in recognition of that sustaining partnership? And beyond the hoopla, beyond the compromises, and beyond the speeches, there have been thousands who have worked their hearts out for today. Today is a day for enormous pride. Just a distant dream to a handful of visionaries a few years ago, national service is now a reality. But frankly, it's also a day of humility, to say once again how much we owe to those who've come before us and to those far from the legislative arena in Washington who believe in what we are doing and who are doing what we believe in. Mr. President, in January you asked for a hard-headed national service initiative grounded in the best tradition of American citizenship. The program you're assigning today takes a major step toward that goal. To be sure, there are going to be difficult challenges ahead, but we're never going to forget the unmet needs of our communities, nor the equally deep yearning of our young people to serve. Together, we will make service the abiding ethic of our people. Thank you. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, our journey to this bill signing was guided by two extraordinary people, two extraordinary Congressional Committee chairmen who will join us on the podium now. I have the honor of introducing and asked to join us now Senator Edward M. Kennedy and Chairman Bill Ford. I have the true honor to introduce the Chairman of the House Education and Labor Committee, William Ford of Michigan. Having seen in his own military service how common endeavors forge a unified community out of diversity. And representing the district, interesting historical information, that witnessed John Kennedy's first call for the Peace Corps, Bill Ford became our great and good champion in the House. Please join me in welcoming that distinguished American, Chairman Bill Ford of Michigan.
Thank you very much, Eli. Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, our colleagues and all of the distinguished guests here, and especially the distinguished guests up behind us, this is an exciting moment for all of us. One of the exciting attributes of national service is what it will do for the confidence of participants who otherwise would have little chance either to serve or to attend college. For my generation, our service was in World War II. And when we came home, we received our due, the GI Bill. It allowed me, the son of immigrant parents, to become the first in my family to go to college. As chairman of the Committee on Education and Labor, it has been my privilege and my responsibility to help ensure that young Americans today have the same opportunities that were afforded to me. Mr. President, thanks to your vision of national service, today we will extend that opportunity to a new generation. It is an opportunity to help improve the lives of individuals and then to reap the rewards. These rewards include a heightened sense of self-confidence, a knowledge of the wider world, and an education. And I expect that when many national service participants get to college and find themselves amongst peers who will have come from more privileged backgrounds, who perhaps have gone to prestigious prep schools, they will react as I did when I got to college on the GI Bill, when I said to myself, hey, I'm as smart as these guys, I can make it. That's right. Mr. President, Mr. President, I had the privilege of being with you at Rutgers University in March when you issued a challenge to the young people of our nation. You said, and I quote, I want to make this summer a summer of service, when young people can not only serve their communities, but build a foundation for a new national effort. And you created a summer of service program in which 1,800 young people assisted children in 17 communities across the country. It is my pleasure to introduce two of these fine young people who are with us today, who answered your call at Rutgers and joined your summer program. They want to tell you how you challenged them. Let's all please welcome Richard Riggins from Washington, North Carolina, who served with Ohio Wesleyan University, and Derek Gottfried from Warren, New Jersey, who served with the Newark program. Richard and Derek.
Thank you, Chairman Ford. Mr. President, my name is Richard Riggins, and last March, while watching the last part of your CNN news brief of your Rutgers challenge to get young people involved in national service, you piqued my attention. Then I turned to MTV, where you gave more details about the Summer of Service program. And exactly how someone could get involved. And I was excited at the prospect of advancing my community service to national service. It has always been instilled in my upbringing that service is important, and my commitment began at the age of 13. My mother has always taught me that what really matters is not who you are or where you are from, but building upon what you've been given and giving back to the community. So at a very young age, I began working in a soup kitchen in my church, tutoring and mentoring those younger than myself, and becoming a youth counselor. When in college, I put myself through school with a combination of scholarships, grants, and loans, and I emerged from college with several loans to pay back, for which I would never want to burden my mom. So I was interested as someone who serves my community, but also someone who has to pay for my education. I wrote to you soon after your interview and was accepted into the Ohio Wesleyan program, where I spent my summer working with young people and helping them achieve a more understanding and more respectful attitude towards one another. And my fellow SOS partners and I developed interests and programs that will be there long after we are gone. And the foundation that we laid emphasized the importance of education and the respect of oneself. As Marcel Proust once said, the real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but having new eyes. So it's my hope that they have begun to have a new outlook on life. I will continue my commitment to serve. Tomorrow I leave for Chicago, where I've been accepted to be a public ally. And I will be working with Chicago area Girl Scouts. Mr. President, I want to tell you that I was challenged by my summer experience, and I think I made a difference in some young people's lives. But the real challenge and what really matters is not just a good service program, but a lifetime of commitment to service. That is a lifelong educational experience.
Hello, my name is Derek Godford. Thank you, Chairman Ford. Mr. President, at the time of your speech at Rutgers last March, I was in Japan looking for a job. I'm an international relations major from Boston University, where I graduated in 1992. After college, I was very eager to work in my field and had been spending months looking for a job in my home state of New Jersey before I went to Japan. My college years were heavily financed by my student loans, and the repayment of which began immediately after I graduated. I was finding job hunting in my chosen area even more frustrating in Japan. On the morning of March 2nd, I was watching Japanese television, another frustrating experience in itself, when I saw you at Rutgers, which is near my home. You were saying something to a huge crowd of college students, but I couldn't make it out over the Japanese voiceover. When I returned to my parents' home in New Jersey several days later, my mom had saved the paper from your appearance because she thought I might be interested in your challenge. In fact, she was excited about it, and my mother's a school teacher who would have loved to apply for summer of service. And I understand now she could apply to your new program, and I'm going to tell her when I get home. I had never written to a president or a public official in my life, and the only person I really write to is my grandmother, and frequently at that. So. But I couldn't remember any time when anyone famous had actually asked my generation to do something so directly. And I wrote to you, quite frankly, because I was looking forward to summer work, and I was anxious to have my loans paid off. And it sounded like an adventure, and it certainly was. I got my application out, and by the end of June, I was working long, hard hours at Aspira in Newark. Aspira is an organization that promotes education in the Latino community across the country. Many of us organized summer activities for the children that included starting sports programs, cultural programs, and computer programs. We also spent considerable time one-on-one mentoring and role modeling. I had done service activities at Boston University and its Community Service Center, but I had never had such an intense and rewarding experience as this summer. I also know that one summer experience, or even a national service program, is not enough to solve the challenges I saw facing the children this summer. I'm interested in your new program where I could continue to do service while paying back my college loans. But no matter what I do in the future, I'm always going to do some kind of service as part of my life experience. And by the way, I'm still looking for that job. Thank you.
For me and those of my generation, indeed, for most anyone living in America during the second half of the 20th century, one family has represented the essence of service in the national interest. Senator Edward Kennedy was the principal Senate sponsor of the legislation. But let me assure you of something. he was much more than that. He has been its tireless and most effective advocate on and off the floor of the Senate. My only regret with the signing of this piece of legislation today is no more late-night phone conversations with that senior senator from Massachusetts and someone I'm now proud to call my close friend, Senator Edward M. Kennedy.
Thank you, Eli, very much for your. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Eli Siegel, and my colleagues in the Senate, Republican colleagues here. I want to commend President Clinton for his leadership on this landmark legislation and for giving it a high priority that made prompt action by Congress possible. Few goals are more important than finding more effective ways to encourage more Americans to participate in meeting the challenges facing our communities and country. The signing of this legislation is an important milestone in that effort. National and community service is one of the best investments we can make for the generations to come. In a sense, it is what the effort to reinvent America is all about. It is the most significant step we have taken so far to return to our roots, to revitalize the sense of community that has always been the hallmark of America at its best. Through their service in the years ahead, participants will make substantial improvements in their neighborhoods. They will learn as they serve. They will acquire leadership skills, and in doing so, they will be making a difference in countless ways in states and local governments, nonprofit organizations, schools, law enforcement agency, environment, and the private sector. Community service, working together, helping others is not a new idea. It is the essence of democracy. America was founded on the concept that free people working in common for the common good can survive and prosper. And from the first settlers to the first astronauts, it's been the secret of America's success. Throughout our country, our greatest resource has always been our people. The challenges we face today are no greater than those previous generations faced, but we have lost something they had, the sense of community that enables us to master any challenge. And in his inaugural address in 1961, President Kennedy emphasized this quality and touched a deeply responsive chord when he called upon Americans of all ages to ask what they could do for their country. The best of the old frontier became the defining quality of his new frontier. And now, with the leadership of President Clinton, we are rekindling that ideal for our day and generation. We do not have to compel citizens to serve their country. All we have to do is ask and provide the opportunity. In a sense, the passage of this legislation marks the end of the me era in our national life and the beginning of a new era. The beginning of a new era in which the best American values are once again guiding our national spirit. Americans of all ages, from grandparents to grandchildren, can benefit by participating in community service. It's a lifelong value to the young. They will learn the ideal of service in their youth, and they will keep it and live it all of their lives. So it's especially gratifying that this legislation emphasizes the opportunities for pupils in elementary and secondary schools. And it's my privilege now to introduce an extraordinary young person who has done just that. A fifth grader from the inner city Blackstone School in the South End of Boston. She was involved in service learning projects last year, and she liked them so much, she's participating again this year. She has created a peace garden in a vacant lot across from her school, organized a can drive for a community food bank, and participated in an oral history project to build community identity. And by helping others, she has helped herself as well, learning valuable skills in art, math, and writing. And I'm honored to present to her now Priscilla Aponte. Priscilla?
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Thank you, President Clinton, for inviting me here today. My name is Priscilla Ponte. I am 10 years old and attend the Blackstone Public Elementary School in Boston. Service has been part of my classroom for the last 2 years. We have cleaned up parks and plant a vegetable garden. We learned about recycling and how to keep the environment clean. We also went to a homeless shelter and learned why people are homeless. Service has taught me a lot, and I have been able to help many people. When I am older, I would like to continue doing service. I want to go to college and be a doctor. I would like to introduce my mother, Milia Ponte. And say hello to my dad, Luisa Ponte, and my sisters, Damaris, Sarah, Rebecca. Thank you very much.
From one of our youngest service heroes to one of our most experienced. Like his former colleague from Massachusetts, our vice president comes from a family dedicated to service. His passion for this initiative has mirrored the president's. And despite his myriad assignments, from reinventing government to late-night talk shows, Vice President Gore has been there for national service, speaking from the heart around the country, cajoling his former colleagues, offering wisdom and insight all along the way. Please welcome the Vice President of the United States, Al Gore.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Eli, and Mr. President, distinguished guests. It's been a wonderful pleasure to be able to work with Eli and his team and all of those who have made this day possible under your leadership, Mr. President. And I want to especially acknowledge the fact that along with Chairman Kennedy and Chairman Ford, there are a large number of members of the House and Senate here who have been personally involved in advancing this idea, in many cases over a long number of years. And the reason we are here today is in significant measure because they were willing to all work together, combine their ideas and energies and talents with the leadership of the House and Senate and the Speaker, Mr. Foley, and the Majority Leader, Senator Mitchell, and with these committee chairmen to make it possible. Exactly 3 months ago, Eli asked me to go out for the formal kickoff of the Summer of Service, the first installment in the whole national service idea. And I stood looking out at San Francisco Bay and these kids here, and 1,500 in total, and they were so pumped up and so enthusiastic and so ready to go to work helping the communities around this country. I was deeply moved by the experience. I came back and told the president in the Oval Office something that he already knew, and that is that practically no matter what we did with this legislation and with this program, if we got it pretty nearly right, these kids were going to lift it up and make it work. And they have done that. They have done a fantastic job demonstrating exactly what this whole idea is all about, unleashing the energy and talent and enthusiasm of Americans who want to help and serve and make this a better country and make their communities better. Some spent it in New York City inspecting apartments for lead-based paint, setting up one-room schoolhouses, or working in Baltimore clearing brush and laying chips and restoring the landscape as they built a nature trail. I'm particularly proud that so much of what National Service volunteers accomplish concerned the environment, and that's going to be true in the future as well. They'll restore urban parks and preserve wilderness areas, clean up rivers, help scientists with research, and do a great deal more as well. This program also embodies another principle that is extremely important, and Eli referred to it. President Clinton's ideas on reinventing government so that it works better and costs less have been built right into the National Service Program from the very start. It's a corporation in structure as much as in name. This is not business as usual. It is a business-like approach to government. It's going to be held accountable. There's a clear boss, the corporation's chief executive officer, who will be personally accountable on a continuing basis for making national service more than a dream. And that accountability will run down right through the system to the individual program managers. And if they don't measure up, they'll lose their volunteers and funding. Third, there's plenty of innovation here. Does that mean that this program is taking risks? It definitely does. We don't want to stifle new ideas. We want to encourage them. We don't want to kill creativity. We want to reward it. And we're streamlining the whole process. No layers of bureaucracy. Instead, we'll work through organizations doing good work in hometowns all across this country. There are more reasons, but I'm not going to give you a top 10 list today. I just want to say before I close that I see Sarge Shriver over here, and I remember in my own family what it was like at the dinner table when my late sister, Nancy, became the very first volunteer responding to the inspiring call of President Kennedy when he established the Peace Corps and showed up on Sarge Shriver's doorstep to help get that going. And when I was out in San Francisco talking with these young people, I felt the emotional bond between what she felt and what her family felt about this country and what these young people feel. You're still fired up. You're still ready to go. You want to? Am I right about that? Yeah! And it's gonna work. I don't know if you've noticed, but it seems to me like a lot of good things have been starting to happen in this country. We're having some breakthroughs. The other day, I was reminded by someone of a quotation from the philosopher in ancient times in China, Lao Tzu, who said, "The mark of true leadership is that when accomplishments take place, the people will say, 'We did this ourselves.'" These young people are able to say, "We did this ourselves." And generations of volunteers will be able to say, "We did this ourselves to build our country." And the true leadership that has made this day possible and this program possible has come from the President of the United States, Bill Clinton.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. I always wanted to be introduced by the host of the David Letterman Show. I was thinking about what my top 10 lists would be, the best things about having Al Gore as Vice President. He educates me on things great and trivial. And that's 10. And numbers 9 through 1 are he has a vote in the United States Senate. So he said, and I'm always on the winning side when I vote. That's I want to welcome you all to America's backyard, a fitting place to come to celebrate the opportunity to serve our neighbors and the opportunity to rebuild the American community. I have harbored this dream for years. It was stoked in me by so many thousands of experiences, I cannot even recall them all. When the Vice President and I went across this country last year, I was deeply moved by forces that were both good and bad that kept pushing me to believe that this was more important than so many other things that all of us do in public life. I saw the wreckage, the insanity, the lost human potential that you can find now not only in our biggest cities, but in every community. And yet I saw, even in the most difficult circumstances, the light in the eyes of so many young people, the courage, the hunger for life, the desire to do something to reach beyond themselves and to reach out to others and to make things better. I listened and learned from so many people. I saw the examples of the service programs that you have represented here on this stage. I watched people's dreams come to life. I watched the old and the young relate in ways they hadn't. I watched mean streets turn into safer and better and more humane places. I saw all these things happening, and I realized that there was no way any government program could solve these problems, even if we had the money to spend on them, which we don't. But that the American people, if organized, and directed and challenged and asked would find a way. I am in debt to so many people, all of whom have been at least referred to, but I would like to say a particular word of thanks to those who sponsored previous legislation on a more limited basis. I want to say a special word of thanks to the Republicans and the Democrats who joined together in the Congress to make sure that this would know no party and that we would somehow reach beyond the normal debate and dialogue to unify this country, starting with the Congress. I thank the people who helped me before I became president to understand more about national service, the people who wrote books and articles, the people who worked with me in the DLC and other organizations. I thank all of you because all of you played a role in this day. But most of all, I want to thank the young people of this country who were so wonderfully represented by these three young people, Richard and Derek and Priscilla. Weren't they terrific? Let's give them another hand. I don't believe there was a stop on our bus tour across the country when the Vice President and I didn't mention our commitment to national service as a part of our drive to make college education affordable to all, but also as a part of our deeper desire to bring the American community back together. I have to say a special word of appreciation to Eli Siegel, a man I have known him for about half my lifetime. I can still remember when we were young with the dreams and the enthusiasms that these young people on this stage have today. I could not have known when we first met in our attempt to do the best we could by our country so long ago that someday we would be standing here on this stage to do this. But I know this national service bill and this project would not be in the form it is, and we would not be here celebrating today in the way we are if it had not been for his brilliant, dedicated leadership, and I thank him for that. Relying on the ancient adage that if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I am today forwarding to Senator Kennedy and the United States Senate the nomination of Eli Siegel to be the Chief Executive Officer of the Corporation for National and Community Service. I also want to acknowledge, as has already been referred to, the roots of our history in all this day, and people who have contributed to this day because of what they did in their time. Twice before in this century, Americans have been called to great adventures in civilian service. 60 years ago, in the depths of depression, Franklin Roosevelt created the CCC and gave Americans the chance not only to do meaningful work so that they could feed themselves and their families, but so that they could build America for the future. And down to this day, there is not a state in this country that is untouched by the continuing impact of the good work done by the people who labored in the CCC. Today we have two veterans of President Roosevelt's Civilian Conservation Corps, William Bailey and Owen Davis. Would they please stand wherever they are? It is with special pride that I will use President Franklin Roosevelt's pen set with which he signed nearly every piece of legislation as president to sign our bill here today. We also point with pride, as the Vice President said, to the enduring legacy and the continued vitality of John Kennedy's Peace Corps, created by legislation which President Kennedy signed 32 years ago tomorrow. I want to acknowledge, as the Vice President did, the wonderful work of Sergeant Shriver, not only as the first director and guiding spirit of the Peace Corps, but for what he did with the VISTA program. And I want to acknowledge, thank you. And to say with some pride that it was my privilege, influenced by people like the Vice President, whose sister served with such distinction in the Peace Corps, to appoint the first Peace Corps volunteer to actually direct the Peace Corps, Carol Bellamy, and I thank her for her leadership. Thanks to the generosity of Sergeant Shriver, I will also use the pen President Kennedy used 32 years ago to sign the Peace Corps legislation to create a new National Service Corps for America. We will call it AmeriCorps. When I ask our country's young people to give something back to our country through grassroots service, they responded by the thousands. You heard a couple of them here today. Eli's office was literally swamped with letters asking to serve. These two young people today represent 20,000 young people next year and 100,000 young people 3 years from now. And I hope, believe, and dream that national service will remain throughout the life of America, not a series of promises, but a series of challenges across all the generations and all walks of life to help us to rebuild our troubled but wonderful land. I hope that someday the success of this program will make it possible for every young American who wishes to serve and earn credit against a college education or other kinds of education and training to do that. And I believe it will happen. This morning, our cabinet and the heads of our federal agencies were directed to redouble their efforts to use service, community grassroots service, to accomplish their fundamental missions. We want them to help reinvent our government, to do more and cost less by creating new ways for citizens to fulfill the mission of the public. We believe we can do that. Already, departments have enlisted young people and not so young people to do everything from flood cleanup to housing rehabilitation, from being tour guides in our national parks to being teachers' aides in our schools. In the coming months, we will also challenge states and nonprofit organizations to compete for AmeriCorps volunteers. We'll ask our friends in higher education, in the foundation world, and in business to continue their leadership in the growing movement of national service. But beyond the concrete achievements of AmeriCorps, beyond the expanded educational opportunities those achievements will earn, national service, I hope and pray, will help us to strengthen the cords that bind us together as a people, will help us to remember in the quiet of every night that what each of us can become is to some extent determined by whether all of us can become what God meant us to be. And I hope it will remind every American that there can be no opportunity without responsibility. The great English historian Edward Gibbon warned that when the Athenians finally wanted not to give to society, but for society to give to them, when the freedom they wished for most was freedom from responsibility, then Athens ceased to be free. My fellow Americans, there are streets and neighborhoods and communities today where people are not free. There are millions of Americans who are not really free today because they cannot reach down inside them and bring out what was put there by the Almighty. This National Service Corps should send a loud and clear message across this country that the young people of America will preserve the freedom of America for themselves and for all those of their generations by assuming the responsibility to rebuild the American family. That is the dream which drove this idea to the reality we find today. I am so proud of all of you who are a part of this. I am profoundly grateful to you. I ask you only now to remember that as we move toward the 21st century, the success of our great voyage, of this, the longest experiment in free society in human history. Remember that it is at the grassroots, in the heart of every citizen, that we will succeed or fail. Today, we are taking a stand in this country for the proposition that if we challenge people to serve and we give them a chance to fulfill their abilities, more and more and more we will all understand that we must go forward together. This is the profoundest lesson of this whole endeavor, and it will be the great legacy of the wonderful people who make it come alive. Thank you, and God bless you all.